Thank you for coming. My name is Kesia Cedeno-Ballard. I am an activist, scholar, educator, dancer, and choreographer. I am a rising senior at the University of North Carolina at Greensboro, majoring in dance performance and choreography.
And I'm Azaria G. I'm a dancer, visual artist, a scholar, and an activist, and I'm currently a rising senior at the University of North Carolina, Greensboro.
I was brought onto the Resistance Project as a student researcher, and the Resistance Project hopes to empower Black women, scholars, artists, and activists through community engagement, performance, research, and workshops. Our research consists of interdisciplinary artistic approaches to the historical presence of agency and intersectionality within the Black woman, including scholars and activists.
It has been a remarkable experience to be able to work under Professor Duane Cyrus here at UNCG as a research assistant alongside Azaria Gadson for the Resistance Project and researching the theater of movement process. To me, this project is much more than only uplifting voices and creating awareness and community engagement. It's about immersing ourselves in activism and change, and I am constantly finding ways to navigate in my Blackness in ever-changing white spaces. This project also aligns with the campus-wide initiative for 2020-2021 She Can, We Can by addressing themes of resistance to oppression and activism led and inspired by women of the African diaspora. Currently, I am working on my proficiency in the theater of movement choreographic process under Duane Cyrus to define and understand intersectionality along with Black feminist theories and to critically understand the historical context for resistance by Black women in 1960s America. My research is focused on Anna Julia Cooper. She was an educator, writer, teacher, and activist. Cooper has important ideals about feminist philosophy and standpoint theory. She also goes on to write about critical philosophy of race and African American philosophy in her dissertation. The research I did on Cooper was mainly focused on her ideology and theories rather than her story. My research findings include text investigations, experimenting with movement ideas, analyzing my everyday life for inspiration, and finding other disciplines to express my research. The video I'm presenting is a product of movement ideas collected from various articles and works by Cooper. I selected excerpts from Anna Julia Cooper's book, A Voice from the South by a Black Woman from the South. I utilized the tree framing method to discuss and produce movement myself. I selected words that stood out to me and wrote them down. Next year, I created a movement or a small phrase for each word and then threaded each movement together, thus creating a longer movement pattern. I did this for 2 articles. I recorded this work initially on the beach because of the significance of the ocean to people of African ancestry and myself. During the transatlantic slave trade, the ocean was used to transport slaves and cargo for goods and wealth between the 16th and 19th century. The history of African peoples is connected to the ocean, both spiritually and psychologically, which is why I decided to film here. The film I described will be viewable via YouTube link in our description box. And now Azaria will elaborate on her participation within our research.
My research with Professor Duane Cyrus started with an observation. We had noticed that not as many people spoke about the experiences of Black women when it comes to lynching. Black women had pretty much been lynched at the same rate as Black men, and yet the contribution of it has sort of been seen as optional or not acknowledged. And this sense of erasure had led us down this rabbit hole of words and questions such as, well, what is the Black woman's contribution? What was it? What does it look like through history? What does it look like today? And are there any through lines? So when we were looking for these through lines through researching articles and women, we began with the woman and a scholar, Ida B. Wells. Ida B. Wells is a former artist, activist, scholar who had been writing about the sort of injustices that had been going on about towards Black people within the South. And finding out about these injustices, we came across these women such as Mary Turner and Laura Nelson, who had been basically given their lives based on their need and their required assigned role to sort of raise their voice and outrage and obligation and this sort of active agency and autonomy that they had taken upon themselves that ultimately led to them being punished for it. And so we stumbled upon this woman named Harriet Jacobs, who had written an autobiography called The Incidents in the Life of a Slave Girl during this period in time where that was sort of unheard of. And so her work ended up inspiring a lot of these ideas that I had turned into visual art and movement later on in our process. So the words that you're seeing on the screen right now are sort of the through lines that we have brought together in order to curate visual art and work that ends up being called Find Your Wings, which is my own personal outcome of our research. So Find Your Wings is basically made up of the visual art that I had created throughout and before our process of doing this research. So there are several pieces that have influenced the work, some of which were made during quarantine because with the funding from URCA, I had taken a residency in Atlanta, an artist residency in Atlanta to curate my work and really focus on my studies and my research and really get into the experiences and dive into the ideas and processes that it took in order to come up with the work that you will see later on. So in these pictures, there are just a few of the movement patterns and ideas that I have been exploring within my artist residency in Atlanta. And the final work, which is Find Your Wings, you will see in the description box below. Thank you so much for your time.